The next thing to do with a shaft seal to aid in installation is kind of a preconditioning, if you will, of the seal. To install one, it's a mandatory thing to have an installer tool. We take a little bit of oil and we put it on the intersection of that seal and on the installer tool. Take it and run it over, this is actually backwards, over that tool. And that will stretch that lip seal out. And just kind of gently work it over the tool. And that gives it like a little bit of a preconditioning to get it on there. First of all, some shaft seals load from the front of the cylinder head and are held in by a snap ring. Others are held in through the back side of the cylinder head and then also held in with a snap ring. However, the compressor itself has to be opened up to get to that seal. Whereas a front loading one, you can take the clutch off and it's right there. How can you tell the difference before you get into this? Well, once the clutch is off, you'll see that there's a snap ring visible when you look down the nose of the compressor, whereas on the back loading, that snap ring, you won't see it. The number one question is, what is the front and the back of a lip seal? The way a compressor shaft seal and lip seal works is the actual center section of it goes around the crankshaft on the compressor. So as that crankshaft spins, the seal stays stationary and it rides on a microfilm of oil, and that's what seals the refrigerant in. The outer edge is a static seal that seals it to the housing itself. So if you look at the seal, the way it's designed, there's a hump to it. And even with the GM, it's a little less visible, but you'll see that hump inside there. The rule of thumb is that that protruding section, or the hump, always goes into the compressor. Why? Well, if you installed it the other way, refrigerant would be pushing up and spreading that, and the refrigerant would come out. When it's in this way, the refrigerant pushes on that seal and seals it to that shaft. Also, if you look at the seal themselves, oftentimes you'll see a more steel exposed outer section, and that would be the outer edge. So we're going to take our seal, get it started down into that cylinder head, get it in there as far as you can by hand, and make sure you're not cutting that O-ring. You'll feel something's not right. And you can take a socket that matches the outside diameter nicely and just push it down. You'll feel it seat down into the housing. This one's actually retained by an O-ring. There's a few snap ring. There's a few compressors that don't have that. Look at your snap ring. Snap rings always have a bevel on one edge and flat on the other. Bevels always face toward you. Install the snap ring, make sure it's seated. If you look in there, there's our bulge in the seal facing inward. So, to install that cylinder head, we now take our installer tool, put it over the compressor, and as you can see, how it does is it makes sure the cone expands that seal down over the shaft and avoids the splines on it. I oil them up real good. You cannot use too much oil. This is just regular mineral, AC mineral oil. Take your cylinder head. I put my hand here just so that the thing doesn't drop and damage something on the compressor. Kind of wiggle the head over it, work it down, and that's it seated on there. And take your tool out. And that's all there is to that one. You can put your compressor back together and bolt it back up. In the case of GM compressors or front-loading compressors, it's even easier. Inside the housing is actually a groove for that snap ring, or for the O-ring. And it's just a matter of working that O-ring down into the groove. And when there's a shaft in here, when this is on the compressor, it's not as easy as it just looked. So you'll have to either take like a blunt instrument or very carefully with a screwdriver and just kind of work that snap ring down into that seal. Then you would lubricate that seal, or the O-ring. Now when this is on the compressor, it'll be a shaft sticking through. You'll Put that down just like we did on the other compressor and work it down forward. Once it's down in there, take a socket, push it until you feel it kind of seat down into the housing, and then a snap ring with the bevel facing out. So that's the primer on the questions we get the most on installing lip type seals, front loading, rear loading.